Okay, YouTube, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. We're back in my garage today, working on the 2010 CBR 600 RR. Previous video, we resurrected it, we got it running. Today, we are going to do an oil change and check a few other basic things because it's kind of important to me today to get this thing out down the street. Literally just down the street. It's not street legal. It is not really ready to ride. But we'll talk about why in a minute. First, let's get this thing stripped of these track bearings and work on an oil change. Let's go. Alright, so since this thing is a track bike, fairing situation is a little bit different. Very easy to get off. One piece on the bottom, one piece on the top, tank fairing, tail fairing. This one's even super easy to get off because I'm just holding the fairings on with zip ties. And yes, it is very secure. Don't get me wrong, there's a few fasteners, but for the most part, it's held on together with zip ties. We're gonna go ahead and get these fairings stripped off, then we're gonna start the oil change. Somewhere in the middle there, I'm probably gonna get dinner. Probably talk about why it's important to get this bike test ridden today. Let's go. All right, so we got the bike up in the air. For those of you who don't know, my setup is a Harbor Freight 1,000 pound motorcycle lift that I replaced the wheel chuck on. It has a clamp style wheel chuck on it from the store, and I went with the old roll into it kind of wheel chuck. We got the bike up on the lift. I'm gonna go ahead and get this old super black oil drained out of it. See if I can show you a picture of it. Yeah. Super black. I'm gonna go with a different oil than I usually do. Mobil 1 Racing 4T full synthetic because the dealership is closed on Sundays and Mondays, and it was really important for me to get some fresh oil in this bike today before it really sees any more running time. So we already got the oil draining out. This one 12 millimeter bolt there. We got the oil filter right there on this bike. Super easy to get to, especially without fairings on the way. So we're gonna get that oil filter the rest of the way off, clean some stuff up, seal the oil up, and then fill it up. We got the radiator to flush. Radiator actually has to come off anyway to get to the spark plugs on this bike. But first things on the agenda, let's get the oil done. We got the fan running, so you guys are gonna hear some noise. And we got Brian 636 on the TV. We're gonna clean that off. We're gonna clean the header off. We're gonna clean the drain plug bolt area off. Get this thing filled with some fresh oil. Junk drawer of bike parts. Oil filter, Suzuki oil filter, another Honda, old school Suzuki oil filter. Let's go. We got the oil all changed. We got to start it up once to let some oil flow through down to the filter so that we could fill it up properly. And then let's just give you one quick fire up. Oh, fresh battery. Starts right up. Oh yeah. I think she's ready for a ride down the street today. We've got a few more things to check and some stuff to clean. And then we are literally just taking her down the street and back. Let that run for a second. Let some of that, should probably get that off the exhaust. Let some of that oil burn off of there. May or may not have had a burnout gun at one point. Celebrating the build of the bike, actually. Okay, so let's talk about a few things. Earlier in this video, we changed the oil on this, and now we're about to do the spark plugs. But before we get to that, some things got messed up in production. I was so excited to show you guys the test ride that, see, how can I best explain this? The timeline is messed up. In the video that you guys saw last, I did the test ride before the oil change, right after getting the gas tank work on. That's not how things happen. The gas tank work was finished a few days before Robert's birthday. The test ride actually took place right after the oil change that you're seeing in this video. A whole bunch was shot over a couple days span, and for some reason, in my mind, when I was editing, I was just so focused on showing you guys the test ride that this thing is actually alive. I put that in out of order. The test ride did take place on Robert's birthday, which was the 10th. That was the day that the oil change took place, not the day that the gas work got finished. The clock showing 1:13 happened after the oil change. I just wanted to clarify that because if you're paying close enough attention, some things timeline-wise might not have made sense. So, long story short, gas tank work happened one day. A couple days later, the oil change took place. That happened to be on the 10th. That was Robert's birthday. Right after the oil change, this thing went down the street. And now today, we're going to finish up this video by taking this radiator off, flushing out the coolant system, and changing the spark plugs. Let's go. All right, so as I think I mentioned before, on this bike to get to the spark plugs, they actually rest behind the radiators, right there. So today we're gonna get the coolant system drained out, radiator off, and then we're gonna go at changing these spark plugs, seeing if that improves the performance of the bike. I actually have no idea of what the spark plugs look like. I've never had them out since the bike has been mine. Let's go. What we do is we just start by loosening up all the hose clamps. We take the hoses off, get all the old coolant out. No matter how hard you try to catch it with an oil drain pan, you're still gonna make a mess. It's just to be expected. We loosen this one up. We're gonna pull that off of the water pump. We wanna get as much of the old coolant out as possible. So I'm literally gonna go overboard and take off every hose. We already took out the bottom bolt here on the radiator, so we'll be able to move that forward. We'll take off those top 2 bolts there, and then get the radiator out of the way and change the spark plugs. But once that hose is disconnected and that hose is disconnected on the other side, right where the cap goes, right here, you have that bolt at the top that I was showing you. You take that out, radiator just pops off the other side where there's just like a dowel holding it on. It's free to go as soon as I release this clip for the fan harness. Pull the radiator out. You can already see the spark plugs. Okay, so now with the radiator out of the way, you're able to see that all we really have left that's gonna give us a hard time are these smog plates. I don't know if on this bike this is a pair system or not, but to be honest with you, it's not important. I'm a backyard mechanic, and all I know is that they're in my way. So it looks like 2 probably 8mm bolts. We'll pop those off just to get them out of the way, and then you got 1, 2, 3, 4 spark plugs. As time goes on, I hope to get better at showing you guys things as I'm doing it. I'll keep giving you these little step-by-steps in the meantime. So this harness was just hanging up there like that. Once you unclip all of the coils from the harness, you can pull it away. It was also plugged in. That harness gets its signal from that plug right there. So just unplug that, pull it out of the way. Unplug this other plug from the smog setup up there. Pry out all of the coils. Set them in order from left to right so that I don't put them back in the wrong order in case there is a misfire. I want to be able to trace it. So that's that. Now we just got to get the spark plugs out. As you can see, I decided to leave these on there for right now and just try loosening the hoses so that I can manipulate them to where I need them to go. So all that's left is to pull out the spark plugs. All right, so we got all the spark plugs out, and yes, they needed to be changed, but I don't think they're bad enough to be the problem that I'm experiencing with this bike, which is not good because I really don't feel like replacing the fuel injectors. But these definitely aren't good, so we're gonna get some new ones put in. So here's the tools I needed to get it done in that tight space. The only spark plug socket I had that fits these spark plugs is 1/2" drive. So I have the 1/2" drive spark plug with a 1/2" to 3/8 adapter. Then you're gonna want the stubbiest 3/8 adapter you have. This is actually a little bit too long, and a 3/8 ratchet. The problem is you cannot angle this setup into the hole on any spark plug. This curve is too much. It comes close on the center to being able to come out, but you still have like a couple millimeters of clearance issue right here. So what you have to do is drop this into the hole, then slide this down into the hole into the adapter. Get it seated on the spark plug. That'll be sticking up enough to put your ratchet on. You get your 1 or 2 turns, you need to loosen it with the ratchet, pop the ratchet off, loosen it by hand. But then, tricky part, you have to again pop this off first, leaving just this in the hole, and then I used a magnet to pick that up. And if the spark plug didn't come with it, I used a magnet to pick the spark plug up too. Nothing we can't handle. We got our brand new NGK spark plugs right over here. We have a new drink other than a Red Bull for a change. We're trying out this Mango Rain, and I am not a fan of mango. It's probably the biggest takeaway from this whole maintenance experience. So let's get back into it. Literally just the opposite of how we got them out. Drop the plug in first, drop the socket and adapter in, put the extension on as gently as possible, spin them, wiggle it till you get the plug in place, spin them tight by hand. And then I forgot to mention what actually really helped out earlier was a very stubby 3/8 drive ratchet, because you only have this space to work with, and if your ratchet is too long, you're hitting the brake line or you're hitting the fender. After that, we put the coils on in the exact same order that we took them off in. Like I said, if we have to chase down a misfire, I want everything to be as consistent as possible. So now it's just a matter of putting this harness back on. I'm gonna try to do this. There's no spot to put the tripod over here, so I'm gonna try to do as much of this one-handed so I can show you. But we're just gonna slide this harness into place. These plugs over there. We're going to slide it into its little rubber holder there. I don't know if you can see that. Probably will have to put the camera down to do that, but we can do that in a minute. And then we're just gonna plug in all of the coils. Yo, hats off to the YouTubers that do this full time and figure out how to stuff and do it by themselves, some of them, and figure out how to do everything one-handed. It's not easy. We got those plugged in. The part I was telling you I couldn't do one-handed is this plastic piece just has to slide into that little hole in that rubber holder. It's kind of like an exhaust hanger. We're gonna do that in 1 second, and then we're gonna plug in the last couple of plugs, and we'll be ready to put the radiator back on. All right, so we popped that in the little holder like I was talking about, plugged one of the plugs in there, plugged the other plug in there that goes to the coils. The last plug right there is for the fan. So, I mean, theoretically, the bike is ready to start up right now, but we have no coolant system. So we're gonna go ahead and take off, and I probably won't film any of this. We're gonna go ahead and take off the rest of these coolant hoses, as many of them as I can get off, and we're going to get all of this old coolant out. We're gonna actually flush the system with water a couple of times before we put it all back together. Let's go. All right, moving right along. Took every hose off, flushed them out with water, flushed the radiator out with water until it ran clear, drained everything again, got all of the hoses back on, all of the hose clamps double checked for tightness, the cap off the radiator because we're obviously gonna need to fill that. Now, right now, typically I will run engine ice or water wetter. Honestly, I've had good experience with both. Just depends what I can get. For today, we're actually just gonna run water. I wanna run water through here one more time, heat cycle it a couple of times, drain it again, get every bit of that old coolant out that's inside the motor, water pump, etc. And then we'll fill it up with the right stuff. I actually don't have enough for right now. We're gonna fill this thing up with water, start it, look for any leaks, and then pull it outside, let it heat cycle a couple of times. While we do that, we'll probably address this chain, which like I said, was brand new, but now has sat and has a lot of old wax and a little bit of rust. So we'll see if and how well we can revive the chain, and then we'll go from there. Get some good coolant in this on Tuesday after the dealership opens.